Well, we did this a long time ago. It's my great pleasure to welcome Charles Riechelmann, who works with us at the Optimisation Hub, who's a dear friend from when we were 17 years old. We're now sitting here at my ripe old age of 54, and he's still a young one at 52. Ex-All Black, now playing with rugby legends as well, had an extensive career that took him to Japan, that took him overseas, that allowed him to see some of life through the eyes of a sportsman. Charlie, thank you. It's so good to be in here again.
At the age of 13, 14, I shifted over to New Zealand for secondary school. I didn't play any rugby in Tonga. What we did after school was go fishing and diving more than anything else. And then came to New Zealand, and Dad kind of pushed me into playing rugby, and from then on I kind of learned that I actually was not too bad at it. So played in Auckland Grammar School first, then for about I think 3 or 4 years, and played 3 years in the New Zealand secondary schools team. Went on to play for Auckland and the Blues, and eventually play for the All Blacks, which is pretty cool. Hub has helped me be able to talk to them, to say, look, it's actually all right for you to actually talk up, and to also for me was to be able to talk to the parents as well, and to try to explain to them that it's different now than what it was back in their day, right? So these kids now got distractions left, right, and center, social media, everything else that goes with it, and we never had that in those days. So it's just making sure that they have an understanding, and for them to listen from someone who's actually grown up in the Pacific, who actually understands the Pacific culture, who understands that the family is a very important part of our lives. It actually gives me a bit more respect for them, and vice versa, so that when we do talk about these things, they actually do listen, and I listen to them.
But for also any career, and I think that's the one thing, is that we do talk about sport has finite timeframes and infinite timeframes. But what has an infinite time frame is your character and your personality and who you are as a person. And if we can build that solid foundation, human being, I think everything else can come from there. Build yourself as a person, build your talents, and know that they are many and vast, not just one or two. And if your passion and love for that talent is so extreme and you really want to get there, you will, because determination is going to overcome obstacles at any stage. Well, we did this a long time ago. It's my great pleasure to welcome Charles Riechelmann, who works with us at the Optimisation Hub, who's a dear friend from when we were 17 years old. We're now sitting here at my ripe old age of 54, and he's still a young one at 52. Ex-All Black, now playing with rugby legends as well, had an extensive career that took him to Japan, that took him overseas, that allowed him to see some of life through the eyes of a sportsman. Charlie, thank you. It's so good to be in here again.
Good to see you. It's been, I think the last time we did this was, 6 years ago? We were definitely
We've
still
seen each other a lot since then, but we haven't done this.
Yeah, so it's now in our 40s. Well, we were in our 40s, sorry. So we're now in our 50s.
It is crazy. To be honest, I'm thinking about, it was 5 years ago. We were both under 50. On the other side of 50, we're looking at this, and I've got to say, it doesn't feel like we look at our careers. And I guess the one thing for an audience out there, there's a couple of really great questions to throw at you today, but it certainly doesn't feel any different. Do you feel any different?
Actually, not, to tell the truth, not really. I'm obviously getting a bit older, but the injuries seem to feel a bit different. But I've always listened to a thing that health is wealth, so that's been important to me. So I've kind of taken that on a few years ago, and been living by it, actually. So it's been good.
Charlie, it's been 5 years since you've been with the Optimisation Hub, since we first began. And I remember when we were training in Brisbane, and we had a small team that we started with, and now we've got 48 trainers. You've got such an extensive history to share with this audience, and I just wonder if you can just give a little bit of your background to the people that might be tuning in who've not heard or listened to you before, and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll launch into a few questions that I think would be pivotal this time of year.
Cool. Well, just a bit of background about myself. I was born and raised in Tonga, a little island in the South Pacific. And at the age of 13, 14, I shifted over to New Zealand for secondary school. I didn't play any rugby in Tonga. What we did after school was go fishing and diving more than anything else. And then came to New Zealand, and Dad kind of pushed me into playing rugby. And from then on, I kind of learned that I actually was not too bad at it. So played in Auckland Grammar School first then for about I think 3 or 4 years, and played 3 years in the New Zealand secondary schools team. Went on to play for Auckland and the Blues, and eventually play for the All Blacks, which is pretty cool. At the age of about 33, I shifted over to Japan and played about 2 or 3 years in Japan for the Toyota club, which is great. Then came back and had another year with Auckland before I retired. So that's my playing career. I've had a few businesses on the ever since. I've got three kids that are keeping me young as well. And yeah, so being back in New Zealand. So now I've been back in Auckland since COVID, actually. So that's been good because we all didn't know what was going to happen with COVID, and it was good to be here with family and my kids and friends. So I've been with the Optimisation Hub for, like you say, for about 5 years now, and I look after most of the Pacific kids that come through, and more of a sounding board for them and someone that they can talk to um, and learn about themselves and become a better person.
You've done some great stuff with us, and I recall one of the things that we spoke about in the early days. We were starting to talk about the role of young women in sport in the Pacific, and we also launched into a number of really big conversations around mental health in sport. And I guess, that pivotal moment when 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the world changed. And I remember times when we were having team meetings and you were saying, I can't get any reception, and you're in the middle of Thailand. We were talking about climbing up a coconut tree and laughed about it, but we loved your life and just loved what you were able to show us. And I know there's been many times you've said to me, come over and we'll go camping. And, that's still something
Exactly.
agenda. And I love, the traditions that both sport and our beautiful small islands, because we share that, coming from Malta, coming from Tonga, small islands that have huge hearts, that give us a certain kind of prowess, something to our personal coat of arms that, gives us something different that we take to the world. But we also know, and we've chatted about this, those differences can sometimes be difficult for us because there's that adjustment. And you've played such a vital role in also embracing those young people as they came through. I remember when a young soccer team over here was going over a big pivotal moment. We were in the room and the kids were sort of talking about, their aspirations, going off to play Juventus, and you just made it so real for the boys. And I think there are pivotal moments in our careers that give us that defining drive to want to go and do something for the next generation. What moments in your career have driven you to want to give back, especially to the area of mental health for youth?
For me, it's always been a lot of it has been about these, especially the Pacific Island community. Like, we're big on family, we're big on listening and respecting our parents. And if we're told not to do something, we don't do it, and we don't talk back. And as young kids, a lot of these kids have actually got a voice. So for me, it has been enabling these, especially young island boys who tend to hold back, the young women in sport. They tend to hold back and not express themselves. So this being with the Optimization Hub has helped me be able to talk to them, to say, look, it's actually all right for you to actually talk up, and to also for me was to be able to talk to the parents as well, and to try to explain to them that it's different now than what it was back in their
Yeah.
day, right? So these kids now have got distractions left, right, and center, social media, everything else that goes with it. And we never had that in those days. So it's just making sure that they have an understanding, and for them to listen from someone who's actually grown up in the Pacific, who actually understands the Pacific culture, who understands that the family is a very important part of our lives. It actually gives, I guess, it gives me a bit more respect for them, and vice versa, so that when we do talk about these things, they actually do listen, and I listen to them. So a lot of it has also been, like I said, just trying to get these kids to have a voice, to actually understand that they can actually talk up, especially issues. We're too scared to talk about issues. These kids, some of them don't even want to talk to their parents about these things, and that's kind of a hard thing as well.
You know, I listen to you, and I think what you're saying is also true of adults. I know we've chatted about this a lot, the change in sport, the change in life, the openness to saying, let's have a dialogue about it's okay to be not okay. But somehow it's still there. It's still a real barrier, and we have to keep working at it. And I guess, that leads to my next question, which is, if you could achieve a breakthrough in this area, what would you love to see? Because it can be really frustrating that we're still somehow trying to convince what we write about to be something that we embrace on a daily basis. There still seems to be this hidden barrier, this sense of stigma, chatting about it, when really it's just a dialogue about emotion, about change, about challenge, about learning.
You're right. It's a dialogue. It's a dialogue. It's having a conversation. Having a conversation and learning. Like, the parents have got to understand the same situation. They've got to understand that these kids have got distractions, have got issues to deal with. But because of their upbringing, these kids' upbringing, they're too scared to talk to the parents about it. So it's actually having a conversation with these kids and saying, no, it's actually, you don't need to be scared to have this conversation. And at the
Mm.
same time, talking to the parents and saying, look, you've actually got to listen, and it's got to go both ways. Rather than sitting there and having a butting heads is a lot of we do, or getting the jandal out, for example.
Yeah.
But it's to them about understanding each other so that they can actually sit down and have dialogue, like you're saying. That, like, emotions now are just totally different to what it was those days. These kids now, a lot of them can't deal with a lot of the stuff that we probably dealt with, or with the parents dealt with.
Social media's changed that too, Charlie. Like, if we think about it, in our world, when we were growing up, we didn't have something that could get to us every day. And we didn't have to manage our image and our reputation or be seen by quite so many people. And I think that's one, you've touched on something really important, because there is this kind of, almost, with the more visibility we have, the fear's intensified. I mean, that's our take on it in terms of our research at OHub, because the more visible you are, obviously for elite athletes, that happens by consequence, the nature of being out there and sort of being seen by audiences. But these young people now have got a broader and wider audience that has access to them, certainly more social pressure. And I guess my question then is it parents induced, or is it sport induced? Because the silence seems to still be there. We're sort of trying to open it out, but is there still a bit of that old school, hey, don't show anyone that there's a problem, because if there is, then you're no longer going to be selected. You'll no longer, and that might be in part, of which we've talked about before, driven by the fact that, families put so much investment into it, both emotionally, physically, monetarily. There's a lot riding on the back of some very, very young people.
Yeah, but at the same, the parents. I mean, I know some parents who are living in Australia now because their kids are made the Aussie team rugby, or whether it be the rugby league, or the netball, or whatever it is. But they've invested their whole family into this, which is a great thing. But this, at the same token, like you say, there are pressures on these kids, and it just multiplies it and emphasizes it, amplifies the pressure of these kids. We were able to deal with it. A lot of kids now are getting better at dealing with it, but at the same token, there's like I said, there's still that conversations to be had. There's always got there's got to be a time where you've actually probably they put aside a certain time of the day where they can actually sit down and talk. Because if they don't do this, this thing just keeps building and building and building, and it gets to the stage where it's the last thing we want to see is these kids just breaking down or something worse. So to be able to like I said before, to be able to have the parents to understand and the kids to also sit down and have dialogue. I can't stress it enough because I know that us as Polynesians, the first thing we do is shut shop. We don't talk. We just tell a kid off or something, then we walk away. So there's a lot there's a lot that's invested into these kids, and to be able to understand what these kids are doing. The game now is probably 80 to 90% more mental than anything. These kids, but like I said, it's just the struggles that these kids are having now, the issues that are always going to evolve. You talk about social media, you talk about image and social media, you're talking about so many people are watching you on social media, so you've got to portray a certain image. And that's also something that's got to be spoken about. There's got to be dialogue about that because you don't need to be that image. You don't need to be this certain person. So honestly, for these kids, it's a lot of when you bring in the social media part to that causes a lot of angst and issues for a lot of kids. And the way we deal with it is that we've actually got to have a dialogue, whether we have a time that they can be on it or can't be on it, whether we can talk to our parents about it. So that's kind of where it gets to that stage where there's just got to be dialogue about these things, and we just don't do enough of it, I reckon.
I 100% agree. So, I mean, Daily Dose that we've just kicked off has been about a demand for we just want to hear more. We like what we get in the courses. We love what's happening there. We like the asynchronous, the automated courses, but where can we get access to more? And I think it's listening to the quality dialogue like this, but also one of the things that you touched on that I'm going to pick up on there, if that's okay with you, is um, there is that investment, there is the need for dialogue. We can feel at a loss sometimes, but do you remember when, we were in training and I laugh about this because I remember you and Amelia and Pandy and Paulie, dackle, 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 the 3 Ds, discipline, devotion, and we really teach that at our club. And
Yeah.
that whole kind of, and I think it boils down to we can get a bit loose with social media, and this is true for adults and kids, and perhaps that's a message we can deliver today. You can get loose on your phone is dominating you and taking you down the garden path, whereas what we need is the discipline to shut off, the dedication to ourselves, and the devotion to the four legs of our stool. What's important, because sometimes it's about trying to constantly pressurize and measure up to this unseen norm or standard or the ungettable likes. That's one of my favorite phrases. It's
Yeah.
like, so how many likes, how many loves? Well, great, that's fantastic. That's social media. How many of those people really know you? How many really know you to sit down and have a yarn? The quality relationship is getting lost in quantity. So,
Well, another thing is it. I mean, it's for these kids, for example, to get a contract overseas, to go and do their best and do whatever they can. And if they don't succeed, if they don't make the next team that they want to make, that's not a bad thing. They've learned so much on the way to get to where they are. And if they get to a point where they can't get any further, there's nothing wrong with that. They can always come back, but they've got to learn that during that time, they are so fortunate to be in that situation to be able to train with an NBA team, to be able to go to a college in the United States, to be able to go to Australia to an NRL team and train with them for a year or 2 years. So they've got to realize that there are benefits, and they are one in a million, these kids, to be able to do this. So for them, if that pathway gets to the stage where they either get injured or they can't go any further or the coach doesn't like them, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be another avenue for them. If they keep working hard, that's what's going to happen for them. It's not the end of the road.
I love your point because how you're approaching building and fostering that lifetime of we're building a human being, we're not building the mechanized.
Absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
human being, right? It's
Mm.
and we talked about it also in the goal staircase where we've kind of got that set of goals and you build backwards and you say, okay, so here's my options as I build backwards. And it still strikes me as absolutely incredible that a lot of the young people that we talk to in our courses still don't have that mechanism just on board as a simple discipline. So, again, I'm going to just drum home a point with a question to you. There's a huge need for sport, obviously, to do certain things. And I guess what drives you and motivates you, not just around sport, but just with that generalistic, we need human beings in sport to get the human being out and to develop some disciplines, because I can hear it in your voice. But so we can sort of look at that concrete. What motivates you to keep doing it? And what do you see being essential for every young person to develop?
Um, uh, as I mentioned before, I think 80% of it is mental, 80% or 90%. So the
Mm,
conversations have got to be had. You've got to realize which are distractions and which are the good things for you and which are the things that are not good for you. Whether there's going to be restrictions as a young kid, restrictions on what time you have on social media. But when you say what to a kid that this is a certain time that you got on social media, the parent themselves can't sit there and go, oh, well, I can be on the phone for so much longer than you can. There's got to be a two-way conversation about the whole thing about that. But determination for these kids, the ones that do succeed, they have a different. I reckon that their mindset, they have more determination. Um, for the kids, they've got to. The big thing is that when they've got to realize that they're not going to be playing sport for their whole lives. They've got to realize that there's going to be a time that they finish, whether they finish earlier or they finish later in life. There's always got to be a plan B for them to go to, because it's not always going to happen for them for the rest of their lives, which a lot of us thought about when we were playing.
mm. That be all and end all approach, I think that's an absolute essential for any sport, but for also any career. And I think that's the one thing is that, we do talk about sport has finite timeframes and infinite timeframes. But what has an infinite time frame is your character and your personality and who you are as a person. And if we can build that solid foundation human being, I think everything else can come from there. Build yourself as a person, build your talents, and know that they are many and vast, not just one or two. And if your passion and love for that talent is so extreme and you really want to get there, you will, because determination is going to overcome obstacles at any stage. But the motivation I think that you're talking about too, and I can hear it from you, is very much, about those specific origins, about knowing that, there can be limitations, but there's also a journey. So if I said to you, and you look back at your career and you look at there's absolute infinite range of possibilities for all human beings, because I think this is also something that needs to be resoundingly for adults as well as for young people. What do you think you would say to someone going through the challenge or trying to push through the next barrier? What advice would you give them if you were to look back at your career and do something differently? What advice would you give to them that you didn't have at that time?
Yeah, we didn't when we were playing. We didn't have the financial support that they have now. We didn't. We were just told that you signed a contract for this team and off you go. And we never had. We didn't have people come in and talk to us about this. We had options of for example, when I first played for Auckland, there was always an option about there was going to be a lecturer who wants to come in and talk to you guys about what you want to do. So hands up, who wants to do this, and hands up, who wants to do that. And we said, okay, and they'll come into the college. But then it became optional. So would turn up for the first couple of classes, and then it was like, oh, because it's optional, we don't really need to go, you know. So that's, but now for these kids, you've got to actually, you're talking about your journey. You've actually got to use that journey as a pathway for your next stage in life as well. You know, whether you want to coach sport or whether you want to move on to the next thing in sport or whatever it is. But there's a time there. I remember Robin Brooke was a netball that was the perfect person who used his time during rugby to own a supermarket to wherever he is now. During his playing career, he had to do 2 years to work in a supermarket, no pay. And he did that while he was playing rugby because he always knew that rugby was going to be finishing soon and that he always had a pathway to own a supermarket. So he did that at the time. And we used to laugh at him pushing trolleys. We used to think, what the hell's he doing pushing a trolley? Because he had to push the trolleys around for a couple of months, you know, or he was in the butcher part of the supermarket cutting up meat. But he always had a pathway, and that was the next thing for him. So
Opportunity knocks, right? It's the
yeah,
good old
absolutely.
Monopoly game. It's going to knock at your door. And when it's
Yeah,
there, one of the things I know that we talk about in the courses, and we've chatted about this a bit, is say yes. Say yes to everything. Never think
yeah, absolutely.
big for anything. You might be carrying a brand on your back because
That's
you're
right.
in a privileged position to play for sport, but that could go in a heartbeat. So while you're there, say yes. Just keep saying yes, you know? Be-
I've been fortunate enough. I've finished playing rugby, but I've been to Thailand, I've been to Dubai, I've been to all these countries because of rugby. And then that's after my career. So there's always a part. There's always, if you keep the momentum going, just say yes, just do things, and it actually comes back. And you've actually, because you've got built that brand while you were playing,
Mm.
you've actually become a person where people think, oh, actually, we could use him to come and visit some kids in Dubai, or, visit the El Noor, special kids in Dubai, or going up to Thailand and all that sort of stuff. So I've been pretty lucky with that sort of stuff, actually.
You touched on a really important topic there, which is collaboration. Um, so collaboration and the ability to work with other people has really influenced the successes you're having now. Are there other things that you feel that, could be great advice around messages of, what are your key elements for building a successful team or a successful future from sport to the future? What would be 5 pieces of advice you'd give out?
Oh my God. 5 pieces of advice. The first one is obviously hard work. Um, the second one would be hard work with a human element. And the third one would be hard work, but it also celebrate successes.
Yeah.
The fourth one would be hard work, learn from your losses, and celebrate your successes. And the fifth one would be enjoy it. This is you'd look back after so many years, and you'd look back at yourself when you were playing, and you think, I've made so many good friends. These are people that I'm long life friends now, and I'll always catch up with them. You've become a successful, sportsman, um, in business, whatever it is that you've gone through. But you've learned so much from that time that has actually made you a much better person that you are today.
I love that you said hard work, hard work, hard work, hard work, discipline, dedication, devotion,
Yeah,
and
discipline, dedication, and devotion, and
nothing's
bulldog.
going to come easy.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, how do you balance your vision currently and your immediate priorities, your projects, your family? What are some things that you do at the moment to keep everything flowing along and all the balls in the
Yeah.
air being well drilled?
That balance is quite important to me, and family time, work time, play hard, work hard, and I always know that there is time for work, and I always know that there's time to shut off work, to shut that away, to go and enjoy. I always try to, like I said, how you always say yes about things. I use that motto now. So if anybody invites me to do something, I'll say yes, and I'll definitely go. And whether it's a drink up the road, whether it's go to a function or whatever it is that's happening, it, there's always balance with time. I make sure that there's time with the kids when they have time for me these days. There's always time for friends and family, um, and work, of course, covers itself. So I make sure I don't work weekends. Weekends are not for work. That's kind of a discipline for me. And then the rest of the time, when I do have holidays, I totally enjoy it. I don't sit back and do nothing. I kind of have to make the most of holidays. But when you're working, you're working. So, like they say when we were playing, was always to work hard, play hard.
One of the things that I fell in love with around sport so many years ago, and even, around the Junior Māori All Blacks, which was the time that I collided with, rugby coming out of Otago and spending time with the guys and then spending time with, the coaches teams. How do you think coaching has changed? And, all credit to riding on the jersey. I think that some of that old ethic has traveled through to many different sports. So my last two questions are, the first one is, you know, has that tradition of leaving something better than when you found it continued its way through everything you do? And do you think it's still crafted in sport through coaching?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, especially with the All Blacks. The All Blacks, it's always been leave the jersey better than what it was before. Um, you don't let your peers down. It's a legacy. It's an honor for us to look after the jersey. So when we're playing for the All Blacks, it was always looking after the jersey for the next person.
Yeah.
So that's always been a legacy for us. In life, yeah, yeah. When I do my job for work, I always run on the motto of actually making sure that the things that I've learned from my rugby career, I do bring into work. So making sure that everything's correct and what I need to do or have to do, and going beyond if I need to.